Namaste. Hi, welcome to the Shaman and the Mermaid. This is your astrological weather report for April 26th all the way through May 11th. And Monday, April 26th is the Scorpio full moon. And this full moon is setting up the flavor for our whole 2 weeks. We'll basically give you our mantra and then break it down and talk a little about some of the aspects.
We're changing up our format a little bit in that we want to just give you kind of the gist in the upfront part of the report of the 2 weeks. And then if you're interested in learning more, the specifics on what days the aspects hit so that you can kind of mark your calendar and, put a little note that this is a whopper, then we'll download that at the end of the report. So up front, we're just going to kind of give you an overall sense of what the next 2 weeks are. And as Michael said, it's a Scorpio full moon. Scorpio in general has a lot of intensity around it. It's a scorpion. It's also the snake and the eagle. It's also the phoenix rising. Lots of transformative energy comes with Scorpio. That's kind of the nature of its energy, is to be one who likes transformation, whether it's transforming from death to rebirth or transforming ideologies, philosophies, personas. It's a very intense because of that death, rebirth, transformation energy sign. So this full moon, and then it's a full moon on top of that, so it has its extra juice to it, could be an intense one. And there's lots of reasons because for that intensity that I'll tell you about in just a minute. But first I want to say something else about Scorpio in general, that it has a lot to do with soulful energy. The sign of Pluto is home in Scorpio, and this next 2 weeks, during this next 2 weeks, Pluto is going to go retrograde. And so Pluto represents the soul, and it's home in Scorpio, the place of transformation and rebirth and merging of energies. And so we came up with the theme because of these two big pieces, the Scorpio full moon and Pluto retrograde, as well as some other things. We took a quote from Rumi, the great Sufi poet, and that is, wherever you stand, be the soul of that place. And we partially felt that it's important to bring that particular theme forward because opposite of the full moon is a house full of planets in the sign of Taurus. Taurus is the bull. Taurus has that real firm, fixed earth energy. So we thought while you're being really pulled upon on this Scorpio full moon and the very next day Pluto going retrograde, that it would be very important for you to stand firm on a soulful level, at the soul level of your being. And what is that? What is that to be firm in your soul? And I believe it has a lot to do with, again, a lot of that Taurus energy, because as our teacher Kaipacha has alluded to, Taurus is the body, and it's the first sign where the body and the soul kind of merge in together. So this is a time where we're kind of needing to stand for our own beliefs, our own sense of value, our own sense of justice, right and wrong. What is it that we believe in ourselves as the individual, and then stand firm wherever you are, be the soul of that place. So that's the theme that kind of will play out for the whole 2 weeks, because along with the full moon in Scorpio, as I said, all these other planets opposite in the opposite sign Taurus are going to be continually squaring with two big hitters, Jupiter and Saturn, and we're going to talk about that. But first, let's go back to Taurus. And Michael, can you tell us all the planets that are in the sign of Taurus that are going to be squaring continually with Saturn and Jupiter?
Sure. The sun is in Taurus, that's one. We also have Venus in Taurus, that's her home sign, home house. And so she's powerful, able to enact things there. Mercury is in Taurus. The planet Uranus is in Taurus, and that's probably one of the biggest players in there. Uranus is in Taurus for 7 years and will be there for another 5 going forward. It's been there for 2 previously. And then a little lesser known, but not any lesser powerful, is Black Moon Lilith. And they're all hanging out pretty close in a conjunction, and they're all opposite of the moon. And so, as Katrina said, we have this stellium in Taurus opposite of the moon in Scorpio, and this continuum between Taurus and Scorpio is body and mind. And so it's how does the soul, or excuse me, it's body and soul. How does the soul and body interact with each other? The sun is your personality, your persona, your heart light, how you shine and walk in the world. Venus is how the body and soul merge together, what your values are, how you manifest, how you take care of yourself. Mercury is what you think. It's the mind stuff, the mind matter. And Uranus has to do with the personal unconscious. This is the one that I think is particularly of interest here. Did you want to say something about Uranus?
Just that I have a deep reverence and I pay attention when Uranus is involved. I'll say that. And then Black Moon Lilith too. What do you think you would say about her?
Black Moon Lilith, in one way, she is the feminine archetype, and she represents what the feminine looks like when it's suppressed, abused, proselytized, prostitutionized, when it's controlled. It's basically when all the powers of the patriarchy are put on the feminine. And I won't give the full story, but Lilith has to do with Adam's first wife in the Bible. They were created equally from Creator, from the same elements at the same time, unlike Eve, who was secondary. And Lilith was both thrown out of the Garden of Eden by Adam, and both chose to leave over sexuality. Adam said he's in charge because he's the dominant force, the masculine force. And Lilith then turns into what is considered to be a demon or a Kali type figure. And it's not that the feminine necessarily expresses that way, but when you distort the feminine energies of intuition, sexuality, emotional intelligence, community, nurturing, it looks like Mother Earth burning, children not being taken care of, misuse of sexual energy. And so Lilith points out where that is, both for us individually and personally.
So all of those planets, and as Michael referred to the word, when they're all bunched up in one big continuous line or really close together, it's called a stellium. All those planets in the stellium in Taurus, opposite of the moon, are going to be one by one, as they move through, squaring Jupiter and Saturn. And Jupiter and Saturn are kind of, if you remember the Muppets, and the two old Muppet guys that sat up in the balcony of the theater, and they were kind of making commentary on everything that was happening down below. This is how I visualize Saturn and Jupiter right now, as each of these inner planets, most of these are inner planets that are going to be having to square off with these two big, powerful, kind of stern, kind of holding a lot of prowess as well as power, and they have to check in, so to speak. So Mercury will be the first, and then the Sun will be next, and then Venus will be next. Uranus is pretty much kind of in a loose perpetual square for quite a while with these two planets, because all three of those are slow moving, and then same with Black Moon Lilith. So there's a little bit of us, as you remember, we always talk about squares as a challenge. So these little personal planets are going to be squaring off with these bigger powerhouses, and it's kind of like, did you do your stuff? Did you check in around? And remember, Jupiter and Saturn represent Jupiter being the big teacher, the guru, spirituality, faith, big teachings. And then Saturn is really karma and justice and fairness and equality. And so all these little planets will be having to stop and say, am I doing what I've been taught? Is this karmically aligned with my purpose, my soul's purpose? on top of that, because this is all about the soul. So it's a time to really define what you believe in, where you stand on it, and then stand on it. Just be the soul of that place, unwaveringly so. And that's really challenging because we get pushed from all spectrums of life to kind of get into the flow of things and follow what is seemingly the way. And sometimes what seems to be the way, because lots of people are doing it, is not always the way for yourself. So just check in with what you believe in, stand in your power, and hold true to you. And that is your sovereign right as a being on this planet, to be true to yourself. And not only is it a right, to me this is a expectation of your soul, that you be you, and you get you, and you take care of you for your health and your wellness and your well-being. And in doing so, if everybody does that, then we all get each other simultaneously, because the individual's getting the individual. It's kind of like if everybody cleaned up their backyard or their front yard, or clean your yard, then everybody on the planet would have a nice yard. The planet would be beautiful with gorgeous green, lush lawns and healthy earth soil. But we don't all just get ourselves, but we do a whole lot of telling people what you should do, what you should do, what you should do. So we look to the stars. What's the guidance? And what we've determined that the stars are trying to point out to us is that this is a time for checking in with the soul and then really standing firm on that. Then we have a couple big moves from Taurus into the sign of Gemini, and that's Mercury will move May 3rd into Gemini, and Venus will move May 8th into Gemini. So until the 3rd, everybody's packed in that stellium in the sign of Taurus, kind of holding that sense of values, sense of bodies, sense of what it is that you believe in. And then also during this 2-week time is Beltane. And what do you want to say about Beltane?
Beltane is one of those mystical quarter seasons. And there's Beltane, which happens on May 1st, and it's the midpoint between spring and summer. Then there's the summer solstice, which happens in mid-June. The next quarter season is Lughnasadh or Lammas, and that happens August 2nd. And then you all know the next one, which is Samhain, Halloween, or All Souls, All Saints Day, or Day of the Dead. And the last one happens on February 2nd. We know it as Groundhog's Day. That's the midpoint between winter and spring. And so these mystical half seasons happen in the midpoints between the season change, when the season that it's in is most like that season. So what it means is May 1st is when spring is most like spring. The energy is coming out, the flowers are blooming, and this Beltane energy happens while the sun is in Taurus. So it's a very Taurian energy: fertility, life force, energy, Mother Earth, connecting to the soil, celebrating fertility, celebrating life, celebrating sexuality and sensuality in a healthy way. And so many Beltane celebrations have to do with honoring the union of the sacred feminine and the sacred masculine in balance with each other.
Hence the maypole, the two ribbons intertwined represent the two snakes, Ida and Pingala, crisscrossing, the masculine and feminine crisscrossing up Sushumna Nadi, or the river of energy that runs through us. And when they reach that full, wrap around the pole, or the full entwine, that represents our whole self, or our holy self, or the sacred union of two beings. And it's a really beautiful celebration, really, to look into and maybe practice a little observing yourself this time on May 1st. It's May Day or Beltane. And then I think everything else has been pretty covered in just the gist of it, under wherever you stand, be the soul of that place. And I think that's a challenge for a lot of us, because we're still in this kind of shock and a little bit petrified from the whole last year and a half of fear-based energy and uncertainty and confusion, and not knowing really what's going on, because we went from 0 to 100 in a day, pretty much, around May or March 15th of 2020 is when everything just kind of shifted and went into a lockdown. And now that we're re-emerging and coming back out into the world, we're kind of doing so with caution and trepidation, and understandably so. And I think that's important to just allow for people to come out from their shelters and experience slowly their reintegration, and be patient and understanding and not pushy, and let people figure things out for themselves, and back off the bullying and the peer pressure that is so intense right now. And whatever choices that people make for their health and wellness, allow for that without putting any kind of undue shame or guilt on top of it. Let every individual make their choices for their bodies and for their soul, and let that be something that they come to on their own, would be my suggestion as a humble request to all of us, that we allow for people to figure things out in a patient and respectful way, to honor their body and their soul. That's this energy for the next 2 weeks.
I would say the last bit I might add is the Pluto retrograde, which happens the day after the full moon, Tuesday, April 27th. But this is a long-term event. Pluto will be retrograde until late September, early October, so 5 months from this point out. And Pluto is retrograding over the degree that things have been happening with this whole COVID and pandemic. And by the way, when Pluto goes forward in late October, it's not going to be moving forward very quick. It's going to be hanging over that same degree. It's going to go forward a little bit into the year 2022, and then it's going to retrograde back over the same point here. It's a year and a half basically over the same energy degree. And so what we think we may know now, Pluto, which is the Shiva, destroyer, turner over of things, revealer, pulling things out of the underground of the soul, it's going to be churning this same point basically for a year and a half. It's not going to let up. So what we think we may know and understand, and if we're dogmatic and say we absolutely know what's going on and what the truth is at this moment, the soul is going to keep pushing deeper and deeper into that point to question and discard what is not. So just keep mindful that this is a deep, subtle energy that's opening up. We've been in the field, and it's going to go all the way through August of 2022.
And there's no escaping your soul. I think sometimes we get a gut instinct on something, or an intuitive hit, which is your soul talking to you. It's your sacred divine light moving through you and trying to nudge or poke or help in any way that it can. So sometimes we get these hits like, ooh, this is what I'm feeling, but it doesn't seem in concordance with all that is. So I'm going to ignore it because I don't want to get ridiculed, shamed, embarrassed, or go against the grain. So we push it down, even though there's something deep inside of ourselves that says, I'm not really sure. If you're not really sure on a soul level, then you're not right there ready for it yet. So just take your time to make choices and decisions about important things in your life. And if we ignore it and go beyond and try to circumvent or make other choices instead, thinking that our mind knows better than our soul, eventually it'll come back. And that's the whole point of that great poem by Edgar Allan Poe, The Telltale Heart, where the guy's laying in his bed at night and he can hear the heartbeat of the person that he murdered, that he kind of put in a shoebox and hid somewhere, that is haunting him because his conscience will never let him forget that. Or the other, a little more familiar and maybe not as morose, although we are in a Scorpio full moon, so Edgar Allan Poe morose piece of prose is probably quite appropriate. But the other less morose is Jiminy Cricket, and that's the conscience of Pinocchio, that is, anytime he tells a lie or goes against his soulful self, his nose grows out a little bit, and Jiminy Cricket's always telling him, the little grasshopper dude, like, you shouldn't do that, you shouldn't do that. It's that insidious voice inside of ourselves that is not going to go away until we address it or approach the karmas of it. And remember, we keep saying each of these planets are going to hit Jupiter and Saturn, the two old men up in the, you know, what are those called? Those special box seats up in the corner. They're going to make sure we're checking in. That's the square. If we're not doing it, then it's like go back and do it again. Go back and do it again. It's like a samskara in the yogic language. That's what we call those patterns that we keep repeating over and over, like hitting our head against the wall, and we don't know why we keep dating those same bad guys, or we keep doing that same mistake at work or in our relationships or whatever it is. It's because we're not listening to those karmic nudges, those samskaras that keep popping up, not listening to our conscience, not listening to our soul self. So this is the time. Listen in, take note, and then wherever you stand, be the soul of that place.
And check the end of our video. We'll list all of the specific dates for this 2 weeks, what's happening.
And then a shout out to all the mothers on May 9th. We honor you. Thank you for bringing the littles into the world, and some of your littles are now bigs. Like this year, it's feeling like that for us for sure. But blessings and happy Mother's Day.